In today's podcast, I'm going to be sharing 3 very powerful and perhaps more unusual tips that can be really helpful with dealing with OCD in the moment. So often when we're struggling with OCD, we're looking for that certainty, we're looking for that kind of instant relief from the anxiety. And unfortunately, when we indulge that, when we give into that and we start performing compulsions, that's when things really get out of hand with OCD. If we can learn to do something else in that moment, that's when we can actually really begin to have a different relationship with our anxiety, and therefore we're able to start feeling a bit better. So tip number 1 is actually a tip around this idea of saying maybe to the OCD. Now, I see this all the time on Instagram. People are saying, you should say maybe to the OCD. And of course, they are right. But here's a tip for doing that in a slightly different way. When a thought comes up and you're looking for certainty about it, you're feeling very anxious and you're wanting to perform those different compulsions. But in fact, what you're going to do is, rather than saying maybe to the thought, you're going to say, I don't think that's true. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not true, but it could be. And the difference is here. So often when we're really struggling with an obsessive thought, saying maybe to it can feel incredibly difficult. It can feel like a kind of 9 or 10 out of 10 exposure activity. And it can feel overwhelming. It can feel that that's too hard. Whereas, if we choose to actually still allow some uncertainty, we're still using this idea of maybe, but we're kind of lessening the amount of anxiety that it might give you. Instead of it being a kind of a 9 or 10 out of 10, now we're kind of reducing it to a 3 or 4 out of 10, because you're saying that you don't think that the thing that you're worrying about is true. You're allowing that, but at the same time, you're saying, but I can't know 100%. And actually, often I like adding in that last bit there. I don't think it's true. However, I can't know 100%. Now what you're doing is you're just allowing that little bit of uncertainty. And that's the key here. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be completely uncertain. If you can just allow a little bit of uncertainty, often that's enough, to be able to kind of give you a bit of a exposure and learn how to get comfortable with the discomfort of doing that. Tip 2 isn't something that you can do in the moment when you're dealing with anxiety and OCD, but it is something that's incredibly helpful to practice and will help you whenever OCD comes up throughout your day. And that is, first thing in the morning, when you wake up and you have your normal hot shower, at the end, see if you can practice turning the shower to cold for the last 15 to 30 seconds. Now, before you tell me no way, which is a completely understandable reaction to that, just bear with me a second. There's a reason for why we do this. When we turn the shower to cold, actually what we're doing is we're teaching ourselves how to experience something that's very uncomfortable, but in a controlled way. We're actually activating temporarily our fight or flight system. We're giving up the sympathetic nervous system a bit of exercise, if you like. And what we're doing, though, is we're not removing ourselves from that situation. We're not performing any compulsions to kind of get away from the cold. We're actually just going to stay in for the 15 seconds or the 30 seconds, and we're going to wait. And it's helpful whilst you're doing this, if you can actually practice slow, deep breathing as low as possible down into the belly, up into the chest, and then breathing out even slower if you can on the exhale. And what you're doing by doing this is you're teaching your nervous system how to calm down in a stressful environment. Not only this, but you're also practicing acceptance. First thing in the morning, almost before you've done anything else, you're doing an exposure activity. Only you're not exposing yourself to your obsession, to your fear. You're exposing yourself to the cold. But actually, it's the same kind of mechanism that you're working with. You're teaching yourself how to tolerate discomfort, how to allow the discomfort of something to be there. And if you can do that first thing in the morning, then no matter what comes up throughout the day, I think you're going to be a little bit more programmed to deal with it because you've already practiced acceptance first thing in the morning. It can really help you then with whatever other difficult things might come up. And so if you fancy doing something that's a little bit different, something that can be really, really helpful, really beneficial, there's all sorts of other benefits that come from cold exposure, by the way, such as reduced inflammation in the body. It generally makes you feel good. It releases more dopamine. So there's all sorts of benefits that you get from this. So if it's something that you fancy trying, maybe give it a go. It's only 15 or 30 seconds at the end of your normal hot shower. Tip number 3 then is to postpone and exercise. So what do I mean by this? Well, so often when we're caught up in the moment with the obsession, we get the urge to perform the compulsion. Really one of the most important things that we can learn to do in that situation is to learn how to postpone doing anything about it. We don't need to perform that compulsion. That's the trick of the mind. The mind is telling us that if we don't perform the compulsion, something awful is about to happen, that we're going to get out of control, that the anxiety is going to be too strong, or all sorts of other negative things that the mind tells us about the situation. The reality is that you're stronger than you think, and you can actually put up with the discomfort of not performing that compulsion. But, we kind of need something else to focus on, because if we just sit there and we don't do anything, then all we're going to pay attention to is that anxiety and that nagging feeling telling us that we need to do the compulsion, we need to get the reassurance, or we need to check, or, whatever it is that we might be struggling with. So I think the really important thing here is that we recognize that postponement is a really helpful thing here. If we postpone and do something else, it's going to give us an opportunity for everything to kind of settle down. If you think of a snow globe, when we are activated by an obsessive thought, it's almost like we've kind of shaken this snow globe, and the snow is blurring the picture. We can't see what's actually going on inside the globe because we are so caught up with the worries and the thoughts and the ruminations. What we need to do is to kind of put it down and allow everything to settle. And when it does, well, then often we see the bigger picture. We're not so bothered by that rumination anymore, or we can see that it was just a trick of the mind. But we tend to need something to focus on whilst we're trying to postpone. And this is where exercise comes in. And I'm not talking about going off for a 30-minute run or something like that. Although if you did want to do that, that's probably a helpful thing if that's something that you already do. What I'm talking about here is actually something, very small, very little. You could literally just do 30 seconds or 1 minute of exercise. And the idea here is to kind of change how you're feeling on a bodily level. If you just do, 30 seconds of jumping jacks, or you just jump up and down on the spot for 30 seconds, or you raise your legs for 30 seconds, it doesn't really matter what you do. You could even just go into the kitchen and do some cleaning, or you could put some music on and do some dancing. It doesn't really matter. Whatever it is, the idea is that you really try to get into that thing and that you focus in on that activity for that specific amount of time. And now you're postponing, but you're not just postponing, you're doing something that's going to make you feel better, because any time that we do some exercise, we actually get a rush of kind of neurotransmitters. We tend to feel a bit better. We get that dopamine. We tend to feel better able to deal with the OCD after we do that, even if it's only for 30 seconds or a minute. Plus, you've also given your kind of thinking mind a bit of a break from ruminating on that thing. You've kind of postponed doing anything during that time. And you might find that when you come back to that thought, it isn't bothering you so much. So many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed that one. If you have any questions at all about anything I've spoken about today, do please let me know. And if you would like to get a discovery call from me, you can. Feel free to follow the link in the show notes, or you can head over to my website at robertjamescoaching.com. Many thanks, and I will see you next time. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
If you are dealing with OCD, anxiety, or any mental health concerns, please consult a licensed mental health professional for support.